Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. Thanks so much for your time. We're going to be talking about attention deficit disorder, especially attention deficit hyperactive disorder, from the holistic naturopathic medical perspective. And this is a very important subject because, in my way of thinking, it outlines very nicely the shortcomings of the conventional medical MD-directed allopathic model. So let's just jump right into it, shall we? The amount of diagnoses of ADD and ADHD have risen in disproportionately to population growth. In the 90s, 3 to 5% of American children were diagnosed with it. In 2013, that figure increased to 11%, and it continues to rise. In 1990, 600,000 children were taking medications, stimulants, usually Ritalin. That's what they started out with, and then that switched to Adderall. By 2013, the number rose from 600,000 prescriptions to 3.5 million prescriptions. 3.5 million kids. This was in 2013. You think that number's gotten bigger or smaller? It's gotten bigger. And if you'd like a reality check, go to your local elementary school, get a hall pass, and sit outside the nurse's office a little before lunchtime and look to see the vast numbers of children lined up to get their meds. Your head will explode. Interestingly enough, boys are 3 times as likely to be diagnosed. This number is changing slowly, but boys are much more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD than girls, which has led many of my colleagues to make the supposition that maybe the way that boys' brains work as far as capturing and relating to data and stimuli from the environment is different than the way that girls are wired. I'm not sure I believe that, because when I was in school, in elementary school, way back in the day, in the early 60s, there was nobody in my class that I would consider would have had ADD or ADHD. And, you know, I don't think it has anything to do with the way that we are wired. I think it has everything to do with our nutritional status and the foods that we eat, but I'm going to dial that in for you a little bit later. The average age of the diagnosis of ADHD, 7 years of age. The average age of onset of symptoms, between 3 to 6. This data was collected about 5 years ago. 6.1% of Americans have been treated with ADHD with meds. That's a 42% increase in the diagnosis over the last decade, more or less. Adderall is the main drug of choice here. Adderall is the main drug of choice. And it's a big deal if you have stock in a pharmaceutical company. Adderall sales in 2013, $727 million. I believe that as of 2017, it topped $1 billion. That's just one drug. There are many that are used, and when you total them all up, there's about $9 billion in sales just in 2012 alone. So, right, if you are a medical doctor, you're brought up inside of the reductionistic framework, and you believe that the body is a bag of biochemicals waiting to break. And when it does break, it's not the doctor's job to fix it, it's the doctor's job to manage it. So when you see somebody whom you think is exhibiting ADD or ADHD behavior, then you have to intervene somehow. And how are you going to intervene? Well, you prescribe stimulants, because that's just what you do. Because you don't think you can cure it. You're not concerned with what causes it. And your duty, your charge, and your license requires you to do something. So you're going to intervene with a man-made synthetic pharmaceutical delivered at a major profit, the intention of which is to force the biochemistry of the body into a particular position, because you think that you're smarter than nature, smarter than God, and consciousness is a function of biochemistry. So you have no problem whatsoever with delivering drugs like this to school-aged children, which, by my way of thinking, is criminal, quite frankly. Now, it's not just the naturopathic doctors that are saying, hey, wait a minute, are we overdiagnosing this? It's conventional mainstream medical doctors as well. This, published in a Psychiatry Advisor journal, a true ADHD epidemic or an epidemic of overdiagnosis. Harvard University weighs in. Is ADHD overdiagnosed and overtreated? Psychology Today as well. So the evidence is as plain as the nose on my face that what's happening here is in fact a problem of misdiagnosis, overdiagnosis of a condition. And who does that benefit? Well, it benefits the teachers, right? Because if you have if 70% of the kids in your class are taking stimulants, their attention is going to be better as a result of the drug, and they're going to be easier to manage. But most importantly, it's better for the drug companies that make the stimulants, the intention of which are not to cure the condition, but to manage it. And then we get the side effects. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you deliver amphetamines to a young child, someone who's 7 years of age, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, doesn't matter. You deliver a stimulant to anybody, an amphetamine to anybody, it's going to develop negative side effects. And they do, and nobody's talking about it. Well, there are some people that are standing up and talking about it. This film was just released by Netflix a couple of days ago. It's insider's look, a documentary of sorts on what Adderall does to the actual people who take it, why there's a big push for people to take it, and the side effects thereof, one of which is, in men at least, significantly lowered levels of testosterone. Plus, what it does to your brain. Plus, it's very, very difficult to stop taking this if you've been taking it ever since you were 7 years old and now you're a teenager or you're an adult and you think, I probably want to try to stop this and see how I feel. It's very, very difficult to get off of this. These drugs mess with your biochemistry significantly, and nobody's talking about it. Because the sacred cow in the Western Hemisphere that nobody is allowed to criticize is conventional medicine. So even when the medical doctors fail us, even when they harm us, even when they bankrupt us, and even when they kill us, leading cause of death, MD-directed medical therapeutics, they get a pass. And this is a very, 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 very big problem. And nobody is talking about it. And, you know, I'm not saying that there isn't a problem with behavior. There is a problem with behavior. But a prudent doctor, a humanistic doctor, a holistic doctor would attempt to understand the underlying causes of the behavior and address them. Thank God for my profession, the licensed naturopathic medical profession, because we are the champions of the holistic method in the 21st century. And by way of review, holism argues that the body is inhabited by a spiritual presence which brings intelligence to play to the machinations of the human body. Your body is so smart, it grew itself all by itself from a single cell into you. Your body is managing millions of biochemical processes right now, all of which are outside of your conscious control. It is the intelligence of the spirit inside the body which is making all of this happen. The body has wisdom. The body knows how to fix itself. The body wants to fix itself. The body is attempting to fix itself all of the time. So it is the holistic doctor's sacred obligation to develop and deliver therapeutics that support and promote the body's built-in God-given ability to fix itself. And that beats a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. And you might wonder, well, why don't all doctors do that? Well, I wonder the same thing every single day that I wake up. So in holistic medicine, we give a broad spectrum of nutrients to the body instead of just overdoing it with one or two. And this is what happens when medical doctors try to get their feet wet in the practice of vitamin therapy. Instead of delivering treatments which are holistic, they'll try to upregulate the biochemistry of the body with lots and lots of vitamin C, lots and lots of vitamin D, or whatever. It's referred to as fractionated nutrition, and it's just a bad idea. And then, of course, we also advise people to stop eating food that's gumming up the works. Now, Dr. Glidden, you've got to be kidding me. How can food possibly have any effect on the biochemistry of the brain and how somebody thinks or how somebody feels or how somebody behaves? Well, if you think that, then I would encourage you to put a very heavy weight on your head because it is about to explode. One of the pioneers regarding the relationship between behavior and exposure to environmental toxins and consumption of allergic foods was Doris Rapp, MD. I'm going to show you a video now from her clinic. It shows what happened to 4 or 5 little kids when they were fed small amounts of a food that they were allergic to or exposed to environmental toxins that they also were sensitive to. Doris Rapp, one of the pioneers of this field of discovery, and her information basically goes unnoticed by conventional
We'd now
medical
like
doctors.
to show you how some children change in behavior, in activity, and in appearance because of some environmental factors. The first youngster we want to show you is a little 3-year-old boy, and we're going to see what happens to him after he drinks orange juice. Isn't it surprising that
Orange
he changes
juice.
this much, this quickly, and in this way? Now let's look at this 5-year-old boy who is being tested for chlorine. Notice how nice he is before he's tested. He's adorable. And now look at him. He's trying to bite his father. He's actually frothing at the mouth. He's trying to hit his dad. He's hollering. He's uncontrollable. Would you believe that this could happen to a youngster from one drop of a chlorine allergy extract? Now let's look at this little 3-year-old boy. He's going to eat some sugar cubes. He eats about 6 or 8 of them. And within 20 minutes, look at what happens to him. He's obviously irritated. He's angry. He is not acting the way he should. And when we give him the correct dilution of sugar, look at him. He's adorable. Now let's look at this 8-year-old boy. He's being tested with an allergy extract for strawberry. Look at how he acts. He is so angry. He almost looks demonic. He wants to bite his mother. At one point he put his finger in her eye and he said, "Fine." Let's look at this youngster. We're testing this boy for sugar. His mother has to physically hold him down because he's trying to bite her, he's trying to hit her. What do you think would happen if she let loose?
All of these children reacting strongly, not because of a bad gene, not because of a lack of a pharmaceutical, but because they were exposed to environmental toxins that they were sensitive to, or they were fed foods that they had an allergic reaction to. Now, if any of these children presented to a psychiatrist's office, not only would they be diagnosed immediately with ADHD, but they would also probably be diagnosed with a little bit more serious psychological problem. And the simple fact of the matter is that there's nothing wrong with these children's brains. There's nothing wrong with their biochemistry. This behavior was generated because of the result of nutrition, the result of exposure to environmental toxins, which flips a switch somewhere in the brain. Nobody knows what it is, and this behavior is the result. By the way, if this subject interests you, or if you are a parent or a grandparent and would like more information specifically, then I encourage you to go to Amazon.com and get this book by Dr. Rapp. Is This Your Child? But this is my basic point of view here, my basic position. Children, especially young children, right? Toddlers, right? Kids that are 5, 6, 7 years of age, younger even, their emotional bodies are not completely developed. And so young children react emotionally without any filters whatsoever. So we can see the extent of the behavior that is generated in these kids when they are exposed to these negative stimuli, not so easily in teenagers, not so easily in adults, because the older that we get, we develop social filters and we develop, the id develops, the superego develops, and we kind of internalize the crazy behavior. But the crazy behavior doesn't stop when you're a teenager or an adult. It becomes internalized. And this, I am of the strong belief, this is what's causing this behavior in kids, this inability to focus, attention deficit disorder, can't keep their mind on one thing, and now they're hyper. Why are they hyper? Because of a nutritional and an environmental thing, not because of anything else. And it needs to be cured instead of managed, which begs the question, how on earth are we going to do this? Well, naturopathic medicine to the rescue. First things first, eliminate the 12 bad foods. Now, many of the 12 bad foods, interestingly enough, in addition to having net negative effects on the body for other mechanisms, people also are allergic to. And the main cause of the crazy behavior in people who consume foods that they're allergic to is because they're having an allergic reaction to them. It's an immune system reaction to them. So, for instance, even though wheat, barley, rye, and oats, we recommend people stop them because of their negative effect on the small intestine, creating inflammation to the small intestine and destruction of the intestinal villi over time. Well, guess what? Wheat, barley, rye, and oats you can also be allergic to. And the same with all the other 12 bad foods. So when we are attempting to optimize the biochemistry of the brain in any human being, the first step is to eliminate the 12 bad foods. That's what we do. And if you don't know it now, you're going to know it now. You can get this list for free at my website. You can also watch a video for free on my website, which explains why these foods are bad. So we stop eating food that has the potential to cause net negative effects in the biochemistry, and then we feed the body food that supports and promotes the structure and function, the optimal function of the central nervous system and the brain. Guess what? Cholesterol, butter. 75% of your central nervous system is made from cholesterol. That's what it is made from. If you had a broken bone, heaven forbid, it would be prudent to take minerals into the body that the bones were made out of. Doesn't that make sense? Well, if you're having a problem with your brain chemistry, wouldn't it make sense to take nutrients into the body that support and promote central nervous system structure and function? Well, cholesterol. And cholesterol is not the Antichrist. Of course, I've done numerous lectures on that subject. We don't have time to dive into that here, but if you'd like to see why cholesterol is not the Antichrist, dive into my archives and reference the videos that I've done about it. So we eliminate the 12 bad foods. We increase the consumption of foods that are high in cholesterol. And then we fill the body's nutritional tank up with the essential nutrients that it needs. That's what we do. That is the long and the short of it. The long and the short of it. Because the supposition here from the holistic perspective is that the kids who legitimately have a problem with focusing, who legitimately have a problem with behavior, who legitimately are not well, they're not well because their body's nutritional tank is running on fumes, because the food that we are eating, even if we're eating perfectly, the food that we're eating doesn't have the nutrients that the body needs to work the way that nature intended it to. It has some of them, but it doesn't have all of them. Needs all of them. Everybody is nutritionally deficient. Everybody. Unless, of course, you're supplementing. So, we fill the body's nutritional tank up holistically. We give all 90 essential nutrients in recipes that the body can absorb, for goodness sakes. Eliminate the food that's bad for us. Increase consumption of foods high in cholesterol to support the central nervous system. And then we take a little extra omega-3 essential fatty acids, because omega-3 essential fatty acids also help the brain and the central nervous system. And it's that simple. Now, there's one more thing to consider here if we are attempting to get on the other side of ADD or ADHD. Once you have done these things, undoubtedly, your behavior or your child's behavior is going to start to mellow and to normalize. Once that happens, be mindful of when either you or your child crashes and burns, especially in the first 6 months. And when they do crash and burn and have, a behavioral episode, the first thing you need to consider is what was the very last thing that child had to eat or drink. I don't care if it was a Tic Tac. You write it down on a notepad, the very last thing the child had to eat or drink. And by the time they've had 3 or 4 meltdowns, you take the list out and there are going to be things on that list that are common. So you eliminate those things from the child's diet as well. And this is a much more efficient and better way to attempt to figure out the foods that are negatively affecting your child than doing expensive food allergy testing. I'm not a big fan of food allergy testing. There's false negatives and false positives, and we're not really clear about how effective those tests are. But the rubber hits the road with behavior, especially the younger the child is. It's easy to see how things affect the child. No filters there. So be mindful of what other foods, in addition to the 12 bad foods, are potentially negatively affecting your child. And if you do that, if you add that as the icing onto this cake, then you stand a very good chance of helping yourself or your child to enter into the undiscovered country of optimal mental health via science-based, clinically verified, holistic medical nutrition. Thanks so much for your time. If you like the information that you've heard here, there's tons more. These are my social media channels, Facebook and YouTube, and the World Wide Web, glidden.healthcare. Twitter, Dr. Peter Glidden, ND. Instagram, @Glidden Healthcare. I am your steadfast advocate for health. Spread this video to as many people as you think are open to it, because quite frankly, the way that conventional medical doctors are diagnosing and treating this condition is going to generate a generation of adults who just can't think straight. God willing, the creek don't rise. I will see you next time.